getting all of the anti-Muslim stuff taken out of the FBI and federal agencies training. It became so overnight that they didn't even let us speak. Sure. So they had to let him go. He came back to the process.
Yeah.
I'm a registry holder here. And I'm going to make sure that she gets implemented in the She wouldn't budge. She didn't. They didn't.
Send it to me, her. Well, actually, that's not my favorite.
And I sent my standard answers. I would go wherever Yvonne. You should go to this. She usually sends me to La Jolla because there are all Democrats out there and they're consistently like this. Now I keep it forward. And they know they never get me to take sides and go to the side. Although I'm getting tired of it, I'd like to go to a nice, where they're not trying. People try to follow the rules. Yeah. Right now, Robert, county GOP. Was that
Start here and then go there and there and then start the next time there, go there.
Many things that happen.
You want me to direct?
Fundraising and everything else, they come in a bad mouth. Previous administration.
And then the next round, switch it up. One.
Adrian doesn't like me right now. They want to do the Alamo. And of course, I'm publishing. Is she on George P. Bush's side? Huh? Is she on George P.'s side? Yes. You didn't see the pictures last summer when she went up to Maine for George P. I saw that. I asked him what's on Facebook the last several months because I get 300 to 400 emails every day. It's all from conservative groups and organizations and people that I have to go through and eliminate about 3/4 of them and then read the ones that I'm really interested in. And some of it's redundant. They spend more time on that than when I do my Facebook. I rarely open Facebook. And with what that idiot's doing with Facebook. Yes. I've noticed a drop off of people who respond to me on Facebook. It's now a very limited group of people. I got 3 times that many friends, so it ought to be more. Now that Rush explained it to us today. Well, Project Veritas is 2 extra days, one yesterday, one today, and Friday. And what they're doing is they have what they call a band. They will sit there and they will manipulate your input so that it stays. Nobody other than your followers, it doesn't work. So they restrict who gets the signal. I think that's pretty cool. And Obama probably. Well, when he came on yesterday, right away, Twitter came up, Twitter just now said, oh, that was manipulation by an That was just one person, expressing his opinion on Twitter, blah, blah, blah. The day they came out with 3 or 4 more people, they were explaining how they, nobody had thought the last one. And they passed you up into that. I'm just here. I'm willing to let everybody know I'm anti-Twitter and really on a border with Facebook. Social media. Thank you for the alert. Good thing I didn't swear. Good thing I didn't say anything I want to say anything. I'm sure it's have to maintain the same principles and viewpoints no matter what. They don't change them just to avoid confrontation. Did you know that Jerry, our treasurer, died? No, she died a month ago. Ray sold the RV park. And so, of course, it's And then I got the email from Priscilla saying she's having her New Year's class. And I wanted to be there too, but I couldn't because I was already. That's pretty good. What do
Just remind me, because I'm on Yes, sir.
He's right there. Second row. Back turn to him. Sorry, I had the glasses.
Javier.
I'm coming. That's for the city. This one right here is what you do. This one's live right now already. All the mics are live? Yeah, all the mics are live. No locker rooms on. No locker rooms on. Are you with Enrique Leal? Are you with Enrique Leal? Okay, good. Alright. Yeah, well, I'll give it. I don't know.
Hi, we're getting very quiet. We've got 2 minutes to go.
Okay.
And we have to stay on our time schedule because Joe Bob back there with MCN, I can't really start until he gives me the thumbs up. And so we have to wait till 6:30.
I want to welcome you to the Futuro Candidate Forum. We very much appreciate you coming out tonight, and we feel that we've been doing this since 2001, and we feel that this gives you an opportunity to find out a little bit more about what candidates stand for and how they hope to help you. Now, we're doing something a little differently tonight on the registration cards, and I do want to mention that. In addition to the registration papers out at the desk, we've been handing out registration cards in case you don't want to stand at the table and fill them out. And if you have a registration card, fill it out and it will be collected. And of course that enables us to send you notices of our meetings in different venues. I would ask that you please print legibly, because I have a terrible time trying to decipher the handwriting, even the printing of some people. So please help us out on that, and Karen will collect those when you have them in the basket. So if you have one, hold it up and she will get it. If you haven't finished it yet, we'll collect them during a little later. All right, I would like to ask you to please hold your applause for all candidates until we get all finished. This gives us a lot more time to have more thorough discussion and more questions. Now, one thing very important, I want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. Without our sponsors' help, we would have great difficulty in affording some of the things that we try to do to bring information to you. So that would be Rhodes Enterprise, if you'll look at our banner, Sam Garcia Architect, IBC Bank, Frost Bank, Rio Bank, and CodeRGV, and I might mention that Renee over there is live streaming on our webpage for
Facebook page.
compliments of our CodeRGV. And we also have Ernie Williams, Val Peason, Exalo Alvarado, Dr. Vanessa Chang as sponsors, and Rio Grande Guardian, Upper Valley Mail Service, and Copy Zone, who give us some very valuable in-kind things. So we, you could clap for our sponsors. And now something very important to me. I think that having people who are willing to run for office with all that entails to serve us is so important, and I appreciate them very much. Would all candidates for any office please stand and raise your hand so that we can, if you would stand, and you're supposed to wave a little bit too. All right, let's do it. You guys are candidates too. A round of applause for all of those who are willing to serve us. And now I would also like to recognize those who not only have been candidates, but have been elected and are currently elected officials. Would you please stand and raise your hand? We do very much appreciate you. And with that, I would like to take this opportunity to say a little bit about voting. And let's see, Mario, where'd my timekeeper go? Oh, there you are. All right, would you like to say something, a little bit of something about what Act Now is doing to try to help get the vote out? Obviously, if we don't get the vote out, nobody in Washington or Austin takes it seriously. Act Now.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me here. My name is Albert Morales. I'm the project coordinator at the Advocacy Alliance Center of Texas, also known as ACT. We're a nonprofit organization that engages the community in the process of voting. We do that by offering registration opportunities for anyone that needs to get registered. We also educate the public about the importance and the process of voting. And last but not least, we have a comprehensive Get Out the Vote campaign during election periods. And so we've been working since 2012 to increase the numbers of people that participate in elections because, like Dr. Knerk said, it is what our state and national leaders pay attention to when it comes to funding and resources that they allocate for certain areas. And certainly we don't want to be left behind when it comes to receiving those things and ensuring that the people of South Texas are, provided with a better quality of life. So I'm very happy to be here tonight. I also am going to say a little bit about some new equipment that the city of McAllen has actually purchased. They have new voting machines that they will be using for this election. And what I can say to that effect is just that the new technology makes it very easy to vote. And also, they're very user-friendly, and so no one should be intimidated when they go to the ballot box, or in this case, to go out and vote. Anything else? Well, thank you so much for being here. One favor that I will ask of the audience, if you can go back home and also to your workplaces, your church, around your neighborhood, let people know about the importance of voting and encourage them to also start participating, because we do certainly need to increase the numbers of people that come out. All right, thank you very much.
I would like to add, not only is Renee live streaming this event tonight, it's on our Facebook page, and Omo Maldonado back there, one of our members, is taping in order to put it on our website, and so that will be visible. And of course, Joe Bob there for MCN is taping, and that will be on the McAllen channel. Joe Bob, do we know when that will be? When it will be on? Well, you'll just have to watch for it. And so with that, I would like to introduce our moderator tonight, Mark Hanna. You're on.
Thank you everyone for being here. I did want to introduce the most important person, which is the timekeeper, Alberto Morales. I know you said something, but he's the most important person here, because it's not very easy telling someone to kind of basically stop talking, right? Thank you, the three of you, for being here. We also want to introduce our three panelists who will be asking the questions this evening. First, starting off on your left, Mitchell Furman, Monica Stewart, and Davis Rankin. You can clap for them. And our three candidates, starting from left to right in ballot order. We have Tim Wilkins, Javier Villalobos. Please hold your applause. And Dr. Joseph Caporusso. I would like to point out that it's nothing but adults in the crowd. Please hold your applause. I believe in you. So we are going to start with the introductory statement. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an introductory statement, and we will go ahead and start from left to right in ballot order with Mr. Tim Wilkins.
1 minute's not really long enough to condense, 50, 60 minutes of things you'd like to say, but hello. I've got a website called wilkinsformcallen.com. There is an abundance of material there in video format that I would encourage you all here and watching to just push and pull on to familiarize yourself with the things that I think are important. I'm a candidate that was born and raised here in McAllen. My family's been here for the better part of 100 years. I've spent my entire professional career, the last 15 years, fighting property taxes. And through that company, I've been interacting with all types of small business owners, developers, municipalities, taxing entities. All of those things are a wealth of information that I think I could bring to City Commission to bring a balance to City Commission with a small business mindset that I think desperately needs it. McAllen is facing some very tough challenges right now at the moment. You've got sales tax declining for 24 months straight, more or less. You've got bridge traffic from Mexico is not what it used to be, so those revenues are down. And the people that are coming from Mexico are staying here less time and spending less money while they're here, and I'm told to stop. But I think I can bring a great perspective to City Commission. Thank you.
Mr. Villalobos.
First of all, I was just asked to pose this question earlier in KURB. And one of the things that I think I offer, and I think something very important, is the experience, the skill, the knowledge I have in the municipal arena. And not just in the municipal arena, but in housing, economic development, EDCs. And that's what I've done for the past 19 years. I think I want to put that to use. I know some of the pitfalls in municipalities. I know budgets. I know what I can do for the city. Now, something that's also very important is I think we need somebody that has the courage to stand up whenever something is not right. And I did, we did, and I think you all remember Proposition 1 was something that was not good, and I was one of the few, initially, afterwards it was awesome because we were able to defeat it. If it's bad government, we can't have it. The bond election we had in McAllen was also not a good thing. I'm not against bonds, I'm against bad government. If it's not proper, we will fight it, and I have the courage to stand alone if necessary. Thank you.
Dr. Caporusso.
Good evening, and thank you, Futuro McAllen, for hosting this event. I'm running for City of McAllen Commissioner 1 for one reason and one reason only, and that's to try to help our great city that we live in. I believe, as many others do, that I will bring a perspective, being a physician, a community leader, and a public servant, and change the outlook of our commission somewhat. I study and research the issues before I make my mind up. I base my decisions on facts, not innuendo, not possible scenarios, rumor, or political consequences. Transparency, sincerity, and morality are my guiding principles. Making the best decisions for the residents of McAllen, District 1, and citizens of McAllen is my first and foremost concern. I have the leadership experience where it counts. I've been on the elected official side, and will do what I can to bring that experience to McAllen. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you notice, every candidate has a passion for the city, for serving, and it's very important that after this election, we understand that we all have to live together. So remember, please, that this election is about the city and its best interests and nothing else. Next, we're going to go on to the public question, which was emailed to each one of you in advance. And that public question, you will each have 1 minute to answer, is what skills, attributes, and experience have you acquired that make you qualified for the McAllen District 1 position you are seeking? So we can go ahead and start with Dr. Caporusso and go that way this time. You will have 1 minute.
Thank you. I bring to the City Commission leadership experience where it counts. The experiences gained as McAllen ISD Board Member, Vice President, Chair of the Convention Center Advisory Board, member of the Friends of Quinta Mazatlan Board, president of the Texas and American Podiatric Medical Associations, the International Federation of Podiatrists, and a McAllen small business owner, have prepared me well for this position. My knowledge of budgeting, finance, protocol, bidding, and other such municipal activities acquired through the above organizations have given me the tools necessary to fully participate in our city's government processes. I've dealt with issues on the local, state, national, and international arena. I've been on the team as an elected official and understand the pressures and issues that go along with that position. CAP, committed, attentive, proactive. Leadership with experience where it counts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Villalobos?
And I guess if you take a look at the mail out that hopefully some of y'all received a couple of days ago, now I'll pretty much just read it. 19 years representing municipalities, school districts, multiple other governmental entities in all aspects, in ordinances and resolutions, economic development, tax agreement, tax abatements, public-private partnerships, revolving loans, development corporations, development agreements, underwriters council, bond council, and having some incredible economic development deals that we have done, including having to go, of course, to Mexico City, traveling to China to bring in revenues and investors from different areas. I have done it for the past 19 years, and I think I can bring, that's the type of skills, experience, and knowledge that I can bring to the city of McAllen. I've been utilizing it somewhere else, but look, I live in McAllen, my kids live in McAllen, they're graduating, I'm going to die here in McAllen. I want to serve in McAllen.
Thank you. Mr. Wilkins?
Yeah, so I guess I kind of got into that question in my intro, but I'm going to go ahead and start pointing out some differences between us. Dr. Caporusso is a partner of DHR, and he stated in the past that he's for this hospital district tax that would burden property owners in a very negative way, in my opinion. He's for funding the medical school, which is in Edinburgh, which I think is a great thing, the medical school, but it's run by a University of Texas health system that's got a $1 billion endowment. They don't need our money. They're not going to close up if they don't get our $1 million. Mr. Villalobos, very nice gentleman, but he just took a job with Donna as their city attorney. And these are things you really need to consider, because as a city attorney for a competing town that also has its own international bridge, there's going to be a lot of information that he's privy to if he is elected as a city commissioner that might bleed over to a competing city that could harm us, from economic development, bridge activities, staff issues, variety of things. I have zero conflicts when it comes to myself in the city of McAllen, other than I fight property taxes, and it's something that I want to drive home multiple times this evening. It's something I think all of you need to consider. Thanks.
Thank you. In a perfect world, each of you would get a rebuttal, but we do not live in a perfect world. We don't. So we will move on to our question panelists, and they will be asking questions in rounds. They will ask questions on a random basis, and we were going to go ahead and start with Mark Stewart.
So I'm starting with?
At your choice. You can start over here with Dr. Caporusso.
Okay, well, and if that's the case, how would you address the comments that were just made in reference to your conflict of interest? And if you are elected city commissioner, how would you address this conflict of interest?
Thank you. First of all, I want to make it clear that I was the first one to announce that I am a partner, and a proud partner at DHR. I also want you to think about, if you go back and look at my service on the ISD, there have been times when there have been a possible conflict of interest due to some entities that I may be with. And I am wise enough to declare and recuse myself. I am also wise enough to make the right decision, no matter what the cost. My morality and my sincerity does not allow me to make decisions due to influences that are not correct. And so I'm able to separate those entities and do what I need to do. I'd also like you to know that I do, and I must kind of briefly address the conflict between the city of Donna, because they do have a bridge. And as a matter of fact, I'm one of the ones that brought that bridge to the city of Donna years ago, and that's why I keep on telling you all need the type of experience that I have.
However, it's going to be competing. Whoever has the most funds, whoever has the most connections to, and I'm telling you, Washington, to Austin, and to the state are the ones who are going to get the benefit. Right now, the city of McAllen, in conjunction with the rest of the cities where they're partners, they have it. The city of Donna is attempting right now to get commercial traffic, and they probably will within a day or two, but they just can't compete, not with the other ones. It has to be addressed, but the communications, it have to be with Washington and have to be with the state, and what's very important is the numbers of the voting population. Without those, we're not going to have those leverage.
How would you help expedite getting northbound truck traffic at the Untitled Bridge?
That's up to me.
No, to follow up. Yeah. Yes,
Okay. A lot, if you're talking northbound, a lot of it has to do with the Mexican part of it, and we've dealt with the Mexican part of it in Victoria, in Mexico City. A lot of the issues are not in the United States. That's why sometimes the United States or the American counterpart has to fund, and I think that's what McAllen did this past 2 years. I think they're doing the right thing. They have to do what they have to do to promote, because that's what you want. You want the northbound, specifically the commercial traffic. That's what makes you money. I think McAllen is in the right direction. I think they're doing what they're supposed to be doing in order to do that.
I guess my question would go to Dr. Caporusso. Do you think the city is being run, or how do you think the city is being run, well or badly?
I think the city's being run with good intentions, but I think it's being run with poor decisions. And to speak to Dr. Caporusso's partnership again in DHR, pressing thing that's about to come up and be very, very newsworthy is this drainage ditch that the city of McAllen gave a license to Edinburgh to cover and turn into parking for DHR. At that time, you had a mayor who was in a very heated mayoral race, and he lost. And since he lost, the new regime has taken a stance that since there's no written memorandum of understanding, that they're really not going to do their part to close their end of that deal. So what you have now are several hundred rooftops in the north part of McAllen that are now subject to a very severe flood because you've got this drainage ditch that's been covered up. It has not been completed. It's just caliche. It's acres of caliche. And the alleyway that services those homes have no appropriate drainage. That's something that is going to directly funnel into Dr. Caporusso's pockets, and it's something that shouldn't have occurred, but McAllen allowed it to happen. There are a handful of things like that that are problematic, and I'm more than happy to discuss after we're done here, so I'm out of time.
I'd like to follow up on that question, especially since I live right by that canal that you were talking about, which has been a concern of ours. But one thing is, what I see right now is something that's already been done. So now, what do you recommend, especially since Hurricane Harvey took place? I think those of us who live right in that area have a lot of concerns about what are the recommendations. Are we now needing to have flood insurance, even though we are not in that district? Or what do we do now that that has taken place?
So from a business perspective and a real estate professional, I would advise you, yes, you should probably get flood insurance because there's no telling how much time it's going to take the city to do what it needs to do. Right now, the city's in a position where they're not even owning up to the problem at this point. I filed some pretty serious information requests trying to get some data as to what exactly is going on, but nobody's owning up to it. And all I can tell you is that when that thing was under construction, the only cars and heavy equipment that you saw from any municipality were from the city of McAllen. So I'm not an engineer. I don't know what specifically needs to be done to alleviate a heavy influx of rain so it can drain. But I can tell you that something needs to be started immediately because it's a big problem. You're looking at a very big problem, and it's not going to just fix itself. So hopefully, if I'm elected on January 21st, I would immediately start a process to get that reviewed, get some answers, get some paperwork disseminated so an answer will be fleshed out, and hopefully the news will start covering it. They have not wanted to cover this issue. It's one of the reasons why I'm talking about it tonight. But you know, we'll get there. If this election isn't concluded on the 20th, hopefully Mr. Cortez will see fit to do something before he's out of there for his election.
Thank you. We have survived round one. Everyone clap it up for that. Round two, we will start with Mr. Mitchell Furman. Do you want to go ahead and start randomly with Mr. Wilkins?
Yeah. Randomly with me.
Numbers released yesterday by the comptroller put McAllen up 4.8% in sales tax revenues, comparing November 2016 to November 2017. After nearly 2 years of declining sales tax revenues, how would you as a commissioner ensure this is a trend and not an outlier?
Well, I'm not sure that that is a trend, and seeing as, does that figure include the retail sales from the holiday period?
From November.
Okay, yeah, so it's just holiday sales uptick, so that's kind of a flawed number. I mean, that's your heaviest shopping time of the year, so to me, you want to look at what happened January to October, the normal times of the year where people aren't buying everything they can for Christmas. But, you know, McAllen has been dependent on sales tax for their entire history, and that is vanishing. And it's not a problem that's going to just alleviate itself in the immediate future, because shopping is changing completely. Amazon is crushing major retailers, and things can be delivered to your door. There's no need for brick and mortar anymore. So McAllen has to wean itself from its dependency on those revenue streams, because they're not there now like they used to be, and they're certainly not going to be there in the immediate future. And they need to shore themselves up where they can undertake and fund the necessary operations the city has to provide, and stop this ridiculous spending that is under the guise of economic development, but it's going to all these projects that are outside of our city limits. We don't need to do that now.
Thank you.
My question is to Dr. Caporusso. Since Mr. Wilkins has made your ownership an issue, could you explain, can you explain what percentage you own? I'm assuming that not all partners are partners at the same level. There's got to be some guys who have a lot more interest than others.
I'm happy to explain that, and I'll say I'm not sure how the parking garage over there makes me any money, but I'll take that, I guess. Let me say this. I have a very small interest in EHR. My interest is not based on what I do or what I do not do over there. I have not practiced medicine any differently since I became a partner. I still practice at the other hospitals here in McAllen, and I'm here to serve our citizens in whatever hospital I can. The question comes down to, do you have trust? If you believe that I will do something against a policy or a person because of my investment, then I'm not your person, and you don't trust me, because that just insults me. I do what is right, no matter what the cost. And if you look at my term on ISD, you'll see that there's been times when Renaissance has come up there, there's been times when other people have come up there, and I've voted in the negative.
Thank you. Middle.
You mentioned ports of entry, which is somehow part of my specialty. So I do have some questions for you on dealing with the ports of entry and communicating with Austin and Washington. Currently, we have some bills that are definitely out there that definitely affect all of our ports of entry and sanctuary cities and the wall. What are your positions, and how would you get your point across to Washington in order to specifically say the needs of the border region?
Well, actually, it depends on what type of laws we're talking about, because I'm not really sure what we're talking about. So if you could be a little specific, because it's too generalized in a sense.
Sure. Tomorrow, Senator Cornyn is going to be speaking in Weslaco. Do you plan on being there, and have you read his bill and know specifically how it affects the border region?
I do not intend to be there. I intend to be out there trying to get the votes from the citizens of McAllen. So no, I will not be able to be there. But
well, let's follow up then with ports of entry.
okay.
Currently, we are underfunded, undermanned, under technology at our ports of entry, which are actually our bread and butter in the border region. You know, we've talked about Donna, we've talked about southbound trade, we've talked about checkpoints going southbound looking for arms and cash. Do you believe that you could represent all the ports of entry with some of your interest in Donna?
Well, actually, I think everybody has a little thing to on there. What happens, GSA is the one that's ultimately going to fund. GSA is the one that ultimately is going to fund, and it depends on who has the best stroke there. We've experienced it before in Donna, and we have also experienced it before with the rest of the communities. On San Luis, for example, was starting to go a little bit behind, and then they did what they had to do, and it picked up. The funding mechanism, I'm telling you, is very political. It is political like you wouldn't believe, because you have the competing, you have Brownsville, you even have Progreso, Indios, Donna, now you have Hidalgo, and you keep on going. Everybody's asking for money. Now, it's very difficult, especially right now when they're trying to utilize all this border crossing and DACA and everything together. We're having problems because the Congress, they're trying to use different things, or as a matter of fact, individuals as pawns, and we're running into issues.
Can I just ask one follow-up question? We are 5,000 manpower short at our ports of entry and billions of dollars short at our ports of entry, which is definitely our trade and travel that we depend on the funds for, specifically McAllen, Texas. So my question to you specifically would be is that when we are competing for those funds, it's actually the devil's in the details of all these bills. How would you communicate specifically to get our point across to Washington? Because we're one group region that is controlled out of Laredo on specifically how our ports of entry are managed. So how would you convince Washington, not per city, but per region, that they need to fund our ports of entry?
Actually, the ones we necessarily need to convince is our Congressman Playa, our senators, our congressmen locally, because those are the ones that are going to be pushing. Locally, these are the individuals that are going to be pushing for us. We need to convince them first. If they do a good job, we should be able to, and because of protection, they should be able to do that. But it is them. That is really a national issue.
We're going to go ahead. The three of you have asked already, right? Correct? Yes. I think that is round 2. We survived. Congratulations. I got caught up in the questions. We're going to go ahead and start round 3, and that will be with Mr. David Rakin starting. You can start with, I believe Dr. Caporusso is next to start the round, or is it Dr. Caporusso?
Dr. Caporusso, what's your view of the just passed drainage fee? And then you might tag on to that. The city is anticipating a $20 million bond issue in May.
Yes, sir. As you remember, we were both at the meetings for the drainage, and I've been to the workshops for the drainage also. We have needs here in McAllen, and unfortunately, the current budgets don't supply enough funding for those needs. Now, I've been to every budget meeting for the past 2 years, and this one a couple of them. I can tell you that as your next commissioner, I will scour those budgets and try to come up with ways to save money so we don't have to raise taxes or put on other fees. But there are things that we need here in McAllen that are going to require some fees and bond issues. We have other things that are coming up very soon that you're going to see. Now, the city can decide, citizens can decide whether they want it or not, but there's just not enough money in the general budget or elsewhere to pay for these major overhauls. And so I believe if people want to live the way they want to live, the quality of life is important, we need to pay for it. And so in that case, I do support the drainage fees.
Mr. Villalobos, what do you like or dislike about what the McAllen Economic Development Corporation is doing?
Actually, I think they have done a pretty fair job as far as attracting manufacturing, those type of facilities. However, one of the things that I've been talking about is, look, you have Trenton, you have 10th Street, you have a lot of individuals that you may be able to help out. These are backbones, not talking to small business, this is the backbone of the city. There's different ways, and it's utilized all over the place to be able to assist some of these small businesses to pick up, whether it be cash flow or not. And it does not necessarily have to be grants. You have loans, you have different things. And what that does, if you can pick up, if you can help out a small business, you fix it up, the tax base goes up. And actually, I'm talking about the real estate tax base goes up. Hopefully, their sales goes up, and everybody wins. And it does not even have to be a grant. Not like 20 million or 50 million to Simon's properties. It's something that they can utilize, give back, and start spreading within the small business community. That's something that I would love to see.
Just a follow-up. They've been tasked essentially most of their existence of focusing almost entirely on manufacturing. the MEDC, would you recommend, if you were commissioner, to kind of change what they focus on?
Well, no, we need to, of course, also look into that because that's the creation of jobs, but we need to also, for example, silent properties, 15 million, 20 million, or whatever. Imagine what 10 million loan to small businesses on 10th Street could have done. And I'm talking about a loan, not a grant. It can pick up the tax base, it can pick up the way South 10th is starting to look. It's starting to look aged. And that's what I'm talking about. If you can help them out, it picks up the tax base in itself, and then pay it back. If we do it elsewhere, we can do it here too.
Some believe that the only way McAllen can grow is by building upwards. But the normal response from the neighborhoods is not, we don't want them to look in our backyard. Do you believe the growth of McAllen is to go upwards? And if so, how do you respond to your neighbors?
Well, ultimately in every urban environment, as land gets more and more scarce, things go up because the cost to go outward outweighs the cost to go upward. We're not there yet. We've got plenty. McAllen has grown a lot. You still drive around and see lots of empty, big parcels of land. The city just annexed several thousand acres south of McAllen. They're annexing thousands of acres north of McAllen. We're privileged in the sense that we've got a lot of land to expand upon. I don't think that that's going to be an issue in the immediate future outside of maybe one or two developments where somebody tries to build a low or mid-rise, and that'll naturally fall into an area that's more commercial in nature, and I don't think that's going to be an issue. I'd like to respond to two things that they mentioned that they answered in their questions. And Dr. Caporusso said he likes to do everything right. Well, he's a partner of a company that has taken advantage of a parking lot being built over a drainage ditch. If he wants to make it right, his company can pay that bill to fix it.
Thank you. We survived another round. We're on to round 4, and we will start with Mitchell.
Dr. Caporusso, what have you heard from citizens during your campaign that you've shaped into policy ideas?
Well, I've been out there, as you know, doing the coffees with Dr. Cap, doing the Cap chats, having people on Facebook, having events here at the library, and listening to the public. And I can tell you, the District 1, quality of life issues, public safety, drainage, and traffic is what comes up. And if you look at that and you coincide that with the survey that was done, I believe 2 years ago, and I believe the survey is going to be 3 years now, you'll see that still is the main opinion of the people over here in town. So, public safety to me is number 1. We can have all these beautiful walks, trails, and stuff. We don't have a great police and fire department. That's not going to help us. We have to increase our walking trails and our bike trails and the people out there. That's where people get their exercise. And north of McAllen, you see them all day out there. So traffic is a big concern also. You're going to see soon from the city coming traffic ideas on how to control our traffic better, buying new boxes, so to speak, that make the traffic go better and transport better. So those are the major issues I've seen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up for Dr. Caporusso?
Yes, sir.
Why is traffic so bad in this city?
Well, I have not spoken to the traffic person yet, but when elected I will. I looked at that myself and I wondered, because I remember when I came here 25 years ago in KURV, every 10 minutes was the traffic and the weather, and it was always hot and no traffic, and now all of a sudden it's still hot but a lot of traffic. And I wonder when I sit at a red light and the other one just turned green and I have to go to that next one and it's still red, why that happens. But I'm not a professional in that. I couldn't tell you, Davis, to be sure, but you can bet that that's one of the things I want to talk to them about and see how we get. And the city's looking into that right now. And like I said, they're in the process of looking into buying these quote-unquote boxes that help the traffic flow better.
Monica? Yes.
The city of McAllen's budget depends heavily on sales tax revenue, with the instability occurring in Mexico and declines in bridge crossings. And the McAllen sales tax revenue is down over $5 million in the last 24 months. what would you recommend to keep our high quality of service that McAllen is known for without taxing its citizens?
Well, actually, that's kind of a not very difficult question. What happens is we know that the economies go up and down. We're at a down point right now. It will pick up. I'm confident it will pick up. However, if you fund and utilize the proper funds in your expensing, there's different ways you can do. For example, and this person was quoted the last time, utilize the general fund, the stuff that you have for the city and the city. When it comes to economic development, do not touch the general fund. Do not touch the city's financing. Utilize, and that's what I've been talking about. Utilize the EDCs, the Economic Development Corporations, to be able to fund things that are proper for that. There's been examples, for example, when 5.4 million was given to Renaissance. 5.4 million. Another example I'll give you, 25 million to Tres Lagos, which it's going to be beautiful one day. 25 million, that, even though it's a bond, the whole city is responsible for paying. And those are the top things we got to be careful with.
Well, okay, the Los Lagos development.
Tres
Lagos, I'm sorry. If my memory is right, during one of the votes, Commissioner John Ingram voted against it, the final deal, because he said it was just too sweet of a deal for them. Is it too sweet of a deal? Would you have done it if you were a commissioner? How would you go about those sorts of opportunities?
Okay, so that development is massive, and the city was trying to make a play to prop up a situation that would increase housing starts in the northern part of our city. So I get what they're trying to do. However, that's not the only development going in town. And I've got a serious problem as a private citizen with the city picking and choosing who they want to try to support financially with incentives and grants and those who don't. The sheer economics of this market should dictate whether or not we need a more supply of residential lots, apartments, homes, whatever. And the private sector will pick that up and deal with it. It's standard real estate cycles. When you start talking about the city, what they need to do to maintain their current level of operations, what they need to do is realize that, while Mexico's problems might not be our fault, it's our situation to deal with. For decades, we've been insulated with the fact that we've had millions of people on the south side of our border that come here and shop, spend, eat, spend lots of money, and we benefited from that. It's not there anymore. So what they need to do is stop spending money.
Thank you. That is round 4. We will start round 5 with Monica. Yes, I believe next is Javier Villalobos.
If elected, what can you do that your opponent can't do?
Well, I can hit right off the bat, I can hit the ground running. I've dealt with all these type of issues. For example, we were discussing here the TERS. And the reason I'm telling you that was probably not the right thing. The TERS, that's not the way it works. The TERS, the developer puts his capital at risk, and then he gets a return through the increase in the property values and the sales and the real estate taxes. Well, had I been there, I think it would have been a little bit different, because where's the risk when the city puts up 25 million? The risk should belong to the investor at that time, because he's going to get it back. And in that situation, it didn't happen. I am familiar with all types of economic developments, with the funding, with those types of structures. I can bring an immediate, in a sense, an expertise of what can and can't be done. And I will be vocal in the commission if I see something that is incorrect, like I've done it before as a private citizen.
I have a follow-up question to that. We have had a tourist, and it was in our downtown area, and we taxed that area for a 5-year period for the improvements that have taken place. Right now, you see the downtown area going through a hard time period, especially because it depends, yes, on the shoppers to the south. If elected, what would you recommend in order to help specific areas of our city out?
You're talking specifically the downtown area?
Correct.
Okay, well, and those are the type of risks we're talking about. First of all, the risk belongs to the investors, the ones that are being helped. Now, the downtown area, we've been having issues, especially with the younger kids. What do I want to do there? A lot of people enjoy it, a lot of people don't. The only thing I can tell you about there, because I do not go to the downtown area at night. I don't. It's too many young kids, and I'm not young anymore. The only thing I can tell you right now is just increasing security as far as that. The risk, the associated risk was by the people, the investors, and that's it. If there was a terrorist, let them get back to return through the increase. But as far as what can we do to help them out even more, I think it'd be a little difficult. That's one very touchy subject within the city itself.
Thank you. Next is Davis.
Do you support a comprehensive program of sidewalks and bike lanes throughout both District 1 and then to all of McAllen? How about Dr. Caporusso?
Yes.
The sidewalks, and what was the other one,
Bike lanes?
Yes, I do support doing that, but I also want to, one of the things I'd like to look at when I become the next commissioner is quality of life has been very important for us here in McAllen. And how do we keep that quality of life and still deal with the downturns of the sales tax, the bridge revenue, and things like that? I'm proposing 3 things to do that. One is increase our conventions here in the city. We have a great convention center, great McAllen Performing Arts Center. Bring in more conventions. We need one thing to do that, and that's some kind of amusement area for the kids. 2, increase the education at Quinta Mazatlan for our students and students across the valley, which will bring funds. And 3rd, increase our sports tourism. If we can do that, we'll have funds that will be allowed to be used for those quality of life issues. There may be times when we're going to have to say, we have no more funds for quality of life issues, and we need to put funds elsewhere. So while we can, I think we need to really think outside the box and really capitalize on those 3 activities I mentioned. Thank you.
Mr. Wilkins, do you think McAllen is getting what it should out of Austin?
Well, as far as what, tax dollars for infrastructure and things like that for our area?
Yeah, as far as our state rep, our state senator, are we getting what we should?
I think that there's always room for improvement. And one of the things I mentioned in my campaign kickoff speech is, I think McAllen, not through anybody's fault, just an oversight, there's been a lot of partnerships that could have been undertaken with the county to maximize those types of dollars that are available. And Precinct 4 has been working on those types of matters. McAllen is, ultimately going to be forced to try to undertake those type of efforts. So it's something that, and you're seeing it now with the storm drainage to add on to your utility bills. So no, I don't think they've gotten enough. I think they can always get more. And it's going to be one of those situations where, the squeaky wheel gets the grease when you're talking about government funding. So we need to make a lot of noise and get their attention.
Just to follow up, do you think they need a stronger presence, the city does, in Austin?
I definitely do. I mean, you've got it's a game, okay? And the money, they've got resources that they disperse on an annual basis, on a quarterly basis for a variety of different projects. And it's up to you to go ask for them. And we definitely need to be more aggressive in those arenas and try to maximize it as best we can.
Monica, I believe your favorite person, Mr. Villalobos, again.
Although McAllen does not consider itself a sanctuary city because McAllen works with federal government agencies, some proposed bills can affect our CDBG funding. What are your beliefs on sanctuary city and the consequences of CDBG funding being eliminated?
As far as sanctuary cities, I am not for sanctuary cities. I really am not. Okay, so if it's tied up in any way to that, I would tend to disagree. There's one of the problems we have a lot of the times is that people want to tie things to other things, and I just can't agree. And the example I just utilized earlier was, of course, once again, the wall and dog, all that type of deal. I cannot agree sometimes, and that's one of the things that makes me vocal, and that's one of the things that I think I can bring to the city commission. If I don't agree on something, if I don't think it's right, I will be vocal, and I will try to educate the rest of them, and they may educate me. But ultimately, I think we can probably find a compromise and work it out.
It's on time. Yes, Mr. Caporusso, Dr. Caporusso.
Recently, Top Golf, described as a sports entertainment venue, broke ground in Pharr. City manager told the Monitor that the city's paying them roughly $5 million in incentives to be there over 10 to 15 years, and they say it'll create 300 and some odd jobs. Should the McAllen have outbid them? Did McAllen try to outbid them? What template, or how would you decide who to offer incentives to and who not, so that it's not done just on a case-by-case basis?
I think McAllen, when they do the 380 agreements like you're talking about here, it has to be a triple win. First, it has to be a win for the company or service that's coming in so they can flourish. Second, it has to be a win for McAllen so that they're not losing any money on the issue. And I've been told that all of the 380 agreements that McAllen has entered into are a win for McAllen. And thirdly, and more importantly, it has to be a win for our citizens. And so these 380 agreements, although they sound like we're giving money here and giving money there to bring these companies in, will benefit our citizens and will benefit McAllen economically. And so if we have a triple win, I will be for that. If it's unilateral for the company, then I will not be for that. And so it's important that we have the people watching those contracts, reading those contracts, me reading those contracts, and looking at what's happening and making sure it's a win-win-win. Without that, it'll never work.
Mitchell, for Mr. Villalobos.
Anyway, you can ask me that question. I know.
Mitchell, you're up for Mr. Villalobos.
Villalobos.
Again, because we're going back and forth. He's getting hit in the middle of the time.
Okay.
Oh, I ain't getting hit. I want some time.
Yes, sir. But it's Mr. Villalobos' turn.
All right.
Mr. Villalobos, would you have voted for or against the drainage fee this past Monday, and why?
The drainage fees generally, and a lot of it has to do with the type of experience I have dealing with municipalities, knowing what happens when you don't have proper drainage. And a lot of people don't know this. They just see a fee and, okay, it's another extra fee, it's another tax. Not necessarily. In this situation, we have something that's going to be a term. And what makes it so important, and if it is necessary, you wouldn't believe what water does to streets. You leave water in the streets, it's going to destroy them. The base, everything. It would be a lot more costly if you don't have proper drainage. The cost of streets is going to be incredible. Now, and what I love about this, well, first of all, I wish we didn't have to do it in the first place, but if we do, we do. It's a term. It's a fee that's going to be there for, I believe, 8 years. After that, it's gone. So it's, yes, whether you call it a fee, whether you call it a tax, if it's something that's necessary, sometimes our citizens have to pay just a little bit extra.
Would you have voted for it?
In the situation, based on the conditions and what I have learned about it and what I have seen and the need and to protect our streets and the quality of life, to have good streets, I would have.
Thank you. Monica, for Mr. Wilkins.
Yeah. I'm going to give you an opportunity to answer that other question, but I also think you're going to get a twofold question here.
Okay.
Being a city commissioner is a thankless job.
Right.
It takes an exorbitant amount of time, and you get calls at all times of nights.
Right.
Why do you want that position, knowing the time element that this is going to take? That's number one. And number two, I'd like to hear your response in reference to the $5 million.
Okay. In reference to the what? The top level. Okay. Well, I've been engaged for years with different candidates trying to, positively influence the direction that the city has taken. And, at those times early on, when you talk about running for office, one of the first things people say is, man, why in the heck would you want to go do that? And to me, that's one of the saddest things I've ever heard. Because, it ought to be an honor and something, looked up upon to go back and serve your town and try to make it better. For me, this office is being vacated by a commissioner who's done quite a few good things. He's seeking a higher office as a county judge, and it's vacant. And the fact that this fell in a special election in this time frame, it's outside of the time when I'm usually very, very busy with my property tax operation, which would be when a normal election would take place. So this was kind of a sweet spot for me to jump in and try to give it a go. If I don't win, I'm not going to be a professional candidate and run for this office multiple times. I've said things I wanted to say, things I wanted to do. I've done that. I hope the voters turn out, and we'll see what happens in a few weeks. Moving on to the Top Golf. What's been happening lately with this economic development is these companies are very shrewd. They know what they're doing. They come into one town, they meet with economic development and say, hey, what can you give us? We want to bring this new shiny glitzy building. The city makes an offer. They go down the street to Edinburgh and say, hey, McAllen's giving us $2 million, what will you give us? Oh, we'll give you $3 million. Hey, farm, Edinburgh's giving us $3 or $4 million, McAllen's going to give us $2 million. What do you give? What do you give us? We'll give you $5 million. Okay, we're going to FAR. So what I said that needs to happen is that there needs to be an application fee for these companies that come in, so when they walk or they go to another competing town and they ditch us, they've got some skin in the game that they lose that we use to fund other efforts that are going to be absorbed here in town. And I also want to see the city publicize a dollar amount on an annual basis that states we've got $50 million that we want to throw towards hospitality, retail, food and beverage operations. And I want people to be able to apply and pull on those funds where your local mom and pop shops can have a shot at those monies instead of people from out of town.
Can I follow up on that? How would the application fee, how would that work?
Well, what I had proposed was, that depending on the nature of what you were asking for, the scope of the amount of incentives and money that you wanted, there could be a percentage or some type of bond type amount put up, Again, it's scaled to the degree of the benefits they're trying to receive. And if they breach and walk through no fault of the city, they forfeit it. And it would be it'd be a process where the goal of it would be to deter the types of activities that are happening now where people go to shop these deals around, and ultimately a city like FAR, in my opinion, goes and makes an aggressive deal that's not very good in the long term. I think a lot of these deals you've seen FAR make in the long term are going to be net losers because they're giving up so much on the front end, and they don't have a guarantee that these things are going to work. And they're all betting on, bars and restaurants essentially. And, historically those things just don't do very well. And I don't think when you're talking about spending public money that's where the focal point ought to be.
Do you think other cities and the companies would be willing to agree to this application process?
I don't care what the other cities want to do. I care about, if when you need money and you go to a bank, they make rules for you. How you're going to repay it, the interest you're going to charge, and the documents you need to give them to show that you're worth your salt to take that money and do something with it. It needs to be the same way with a company coming in from out of town that wants to build something here. If they want millions of dollars from us to build something here, that in a lot of these cases, what McAllen has funded, these bars and restaurants to a degree, it's not like people are flying down from Dallas to go eat at some of these bars and restaurants. It's cannibalizing customers from other existing bars and restaurants, staff, and things of that nature, and it's not a healthy proposition on a global perspective. It's a net negative for everyone involved, and I don't agree with it. I don't think it's anything that they ought to be doing. If you start talking about manufacturing, which are large enterprises, different story. But right now, all this money is going to basically bars and restaurants. It's not a wise move in the long term, in my opinion.
Thank you. Monica, if you could start with Dr. Caporusso.
What do you believe to be the greatest need in your district, and how do you propose to address those needs?
In my district, I believe the biggest concerns right now is the economy and the stores up there, along with the quality of life issues. A lot of the areas of walking and bicycle are in North McAllen, as you know, and so those need to be taken care of. They're also concerned about property values and keeping the property values up to where they want them. The people that have talked to me, like I said before, talked about the traffic, talked about medians, which will come up some point along here, and their distaste for medians and not having medians there. But mostly I hear about quality of life issues in North McAllen and the businesses that are there and how we can increase the businesses there. As you know, 25% of the sales tax comes from 7504. And so it's important that we do everything we can to increase the sales tax in that region. So that's what we're really worried about up there, and that's what me as the next city commissioner will work on, along with the other city commissioners for all of McAllen.
Mr. Rankin, Mr. Villalobos.
How effective do you think, well, let me back up, I think the McAllen Chamber of Commerce, I think it's about $1 million a year from the city, I could, more or less. How effective do you think the Chamber of Commerce is in doing its job?
Actually, I think we have one of the best chambers around, at least that I have seen. I love the fact that they put on their, I can't say productions, their events. Gets people together, gets people involved. I wasn't sure, or I did not know that they get $1 million. That's quite big. Maybe that's
put that in the paper. That was my memory from the budget hearing a while ago.
I don't know how much they get, but actually I think the chamber does an excellent job informing individuals, informing the businesses, and promoting and telling them how to do or promote their business. $1 million though, I didn't know that was the amount, but I think they do an excellent job.
Mitchell for Mr. Wilkins.
Mr. Wilkins, it's looking like the city's going to be having a bond election in May, with one proposition being for drainage and the other for traffic improvements. Would you support that, or would you have changes?
Again, I'm of the firm opinion that when you look at the obligations that the city has made, you know, a couple $1 million to medical school, which is in Edinburgh, which I think is a great thing. I just don't think they need McAllen's money. You look at some of these economic development initiatives that have been undertaken. I'm of the opinion that McAllen has all the revenue that they need to do what they are supposed to do by providing the services and infrastructure. I'm also of the opinion that they certainly don't have the revenue streams to do everything that they want to do. And what they simply need to do is fine-tooth comb over that budget, find these pockets of what I would call wasteful expenditures, and pigeonhole that for these things that they've got to address, and minimize your impact on the citizens. Because if they keep hitting us with these fees and taxes and whatnot, your property tax values are going to go down, the revenue for all these taxing entities are going to go down, and you're going to have this circular problem where they're going to have to raise rates and fees again to make up for the revenue that they're not getting to do what they should be doing already. And it's just it's a problem, so it has to stop.
Would you support the bond, or no?
To be honest with you, I'm not familiar with exactly what the bond entails, but if the bond is it just for drainage infrastructure?
Yeah, drainage and traffic improvements.
I would say no. There's ways that they can fund this by not spending in other areas and spending on these things that are core needs. So no, I would not support this bond.
Monica, Mr. Villalobos.
The ad valorem taxes of the city of McAllen pays for one department in the city. With sales tax revenues being down, first, what is that city that the ad valorem taxes pay for? And how would you propose taking care of it if we have a decrease in sales tax revenue?
You're asking me what that...
Mr. Villalobos.
That's what you mean.
First of all, let me just kind of respond on the other one first, because I think it is very important. Something I have addressed. I probably would be for the bonds, for the infrastructure, for the traffic, and for the drainage. But anyway, if we're short on something, it's very simple. You gotta tighten your belt. You gotta tighten your belt and do whatever you gotta do. And that's something that generally governmental entities don't want to do. They're not used to doing. When revenues goes up, it just almost automatically, they keep on growing. They keep on growing. But once it tightens, what do they want to do? If it's at the lower taxes, they want to increase. They want to increase the taxes. And that's something that I'm totally against. Because no matter what, the appraisals go up, and taxes are going to go up no matter what. I cannot agree. Whenever something goes, we have to tighten our belt. And that's something that governmental entities, including the ones I've dealt with, schools, housing authorities, everything, they usually don't want to do, but it's something that they have to do.
Time. Davis for Dr. Caporusso.
I'll follow this up. Do you know what that one department of the city is that all our ad valorem taxes pay for?
Pardon?
This is going to Dr. Caporusso. Do you know what that department is?
Are we talking about the police and fire department?
It's a police and fire department.
Yes, ma'am.
And so therefore, if the revenues are not coming in, and right now with our dealings with the insecurity on the south side and our south side and the violence on the south, if all of our ad valorem taxes pay for one department, what would you propose on how are we going to fix when our sales tax revenues pay for everything else?
Yes, ma'am, and that's totally true. That's why it's important that we get away from reliance only on sales tax. When I'm proposing those three items that I talked about, Quinta Mazatlán, increasing education, having the sports tourism and the conventions, that's going to take a little time. I'm not going to say it's going to be an overnight thing. And I agree with Mr. Villalobos, we have to tighten our belts a little bit. But we've gotten into the situation, and not from fault of anybody on the current commission and the city manager, but there are needs that have to be taken care of, that if not, like the drainage, people's houses will be flooded, the streets will be broken because of the city water and so on and so forth. Not to mention the healthcare needs of the problems with water, city water. And so we have to look real closely at our budget and say, hey, maybe we can't do X, Y, and Z this year because we need to do A, B, and C, which is not a quality of life issue, but an issue of drainage, an issue of safety, which has to be number one in my opinion. So we do have to tighten our belt somewhat, but the other problem is that these issues are mega millions of dollars. It's not like you can stop doing X and save $100,000 this year and put it to something else. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars. And so there are going to be times when we're going to have to face some difficult decisions, and that may mean a bond issue. And I don't want to pay any more taxes like anybody else, but I also want to live without water rushing into my house or things like that.
Time. Thank you. Mr. Rankin or Mr. Wilkins?
McAllen's the largest city in Idaho County, and it's divided into 3 different county commission precincts, so that arguably those commissioners don't owe their election to McAllen residents and might have less incentive to represent the city's interests at the courthouse. Do you agree with what I just said, and how would you fix the problem?
Fix what problem?
Being split in 3 so that we're essentially minority parts of larger populations.
Well, I don't necessarily know that, I can't articulate that that's necessarily a problem. I can speak to the problem that I've seen here, the way our districts are set up, and the fact that, McAllen has its own elections department. We're holding a special election that took place over the holidays that encompassed Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and here we are experiencing a 7% turnout. And it's astoundingly low, and it's absurd, it's sad. But the problem, I think, is there's a lot of apathy, and this kind of ties into the question you're asking. The apathy from the voters that I've heard, from the ones I've spoken to, there's no uniformity in when these elections take place. Seems like there's an election every 3, 4, 5 months. There's always a proposition coming up, something happening. And I think it would behoove the powers that be to consolidate all these elections into one time of the year so people are aware. And when it's November or March, we go vote and you don't get lost in the noise.
Thank you. Mitchell for Mr. Villalobos.
Mr. Villalobos, do you think the annual holiday parade is a good thing or a bad thing for McAllen?
I think initially it started off and probably was not planned very well. The second time, hopefully a little bit better. I think it's something that people enjoy. I have not seen the numbers, how they came this year, but hopefully if you get, it's something that, and it does also generate revenues, it does. And I haven't seen the estimates, but it's something people enjoy if it is planned properly and at a decent cost. I would support it. I would support it. But of course, with transparency and that everything, when everybody that sings a song, we know exactly what they got paid for. And I think y'all know what I mean.
So this will be the last round. So before you ask your questions, just know that this will be the last round. We are almost there. Monica for Dr. Caporusso.
Currently, the CHIP program of Medicaid is definitely having issues in funding. There are many patients in our district and in this entire city that will be affected if it is not funded in the federal and the state level. What recommendations, if the federal government does not fund it, what are your recommendations to the state and to the city to deal with the health care of our children?
Great question, and this goes back to a couple of the questions beforehand. We have to be on top of, people say that the health of our counties deals with the county commissioners and let them deal with it. But you know what? We have a big part to play in that. McAllen, our kids, as you just said. And so McAllen has to be at the table making sure that these things happen for our children. We have to make sure that our representatives understand how important that is for us. I see it every day in the hospitals. And I tell you, it needs to be changed. You can call it whatever you want. You can assume that I'm in favor of a tax. What I'm in favor of is doing something for those poor kids that won't have care because the chips are not being reimbursed and have no place to go. We need to make sure, because we have officials that deal with that. McAllen needs to be at the table, at the county level, at the state level, and at the national level, making sure that our representatives understand what we need. And that's how we get involved. Not sitting back and saying, well, they'll take care of us. We need to take care of ourselves. So let's get on there and make sure that they know what we need.
Mitchell, for Mr. Wilkins.
Mr. Wilkins, do you think McAllen is getting what it should out of Washington?
Kind of similar to the question I asked him. I'd say no. I mean, like, when you're talking about government spending, it's obvious that they're wild and crazy doling out money. Obviously, we've got a lot of deficiencies here that we could correct if we had some people being very aggressive up there playing that game, trying to get those dollars allocated to us. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not familiar with how things work in Washington. Don't want to be. But I do know from what I've read and seen and how these other regions have developed. Look at Laredo, for example. They've done spectacular things due to increased allocations of funding for their highways and roads and bridge infrastructure. We missed the boat on that. And I don't know who missed the boat, but I know it's correctable because we can go pull on those lines of funds and use them to our advantage. We just have to be aggressive with it. So no, we're not getting enough from Washington, but that's an easy thing to fix.
How do you think we could fix that?
Well, you've got to get your local representation that represents this area on board to lobby for what it is we need. And there's all kinds of things we can do to put pressure on. Elected officials like to remain elected, and we need to get them down here and explain what our deficiencies are, familiarize ourselves with what is available that we could draw on, and find out what we need to do to successfully do that. I don't know those answers, but they're not hard to find. You just have to familiarize yourself with what's available. There's programs. There's thick books of programs, most of which go underutilized because people aren't asking for the funds. It's our job to familiarize ourselves with it and go after that money. And we need to use our elected officials in those areas, Washington and Austin, to try to help us successfully complete that task.
Thank you. Davis for Mr. Villalobos.
There was, within the last year, oil company wanted to drill in North McAllen near the Cons. It was a slant fracking drill proposal, and it was turned away by the city commission. Should the city allow fracking in its inside the city?
First of all, let me kind of take just a few seconds as to why Washington and the state are not funding enough. Look at the voter apathy. Ladies and gentlemen, a few days ago, in this race, we only had 314 people in 5 days. That's a little bit ridiculous. And not only that, look at the number of votes that come out. And the other problem we have is that we really, truly do need a two-party system in Hidalgo County. Otherwise, we're never going to get the attention of Washington and the state. They take us for granted. They take Democrats for granted, and they say, Republicans, y'all are not enough. And so that's something that has to change. Now, as far as fracking, right off the bat, I can tell you the answer would be no. I think people, especially in North McAllen, have the preservation of the quality of life and the property value, that's something that I've been fighting for since I started. You live in North McAllen because that's where you want to live, and you invest a lot.
Time.
My answer would be definitely no.
Thank you. We will now have each candidate, you will have a whole 2 minutes. Congratulations, you moved on up. You will have 2 minutes to summarize and tell everyone watching why they should go out and vote for you. Dr. Caporusso, we started with you, so we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Wilkins.
So, when I began my race, in my campaign kickoff speech, I made the analogy that McAllen is very similar to this donut. A lot of people giggle and laugh, but McAllen has become the center of this donut in that all of your new development, your housing starts, your sales tax revenue generation has all been going in FAR, Mission, Edinburgh, surrounding towns, not here. And it's a major problem. When you talk with small business owners, people that are looking at expanding their businesses, quite a few of them will tell you that they'd much rather locate in FAR right on McAllen city limits or in Mission on McAllen city limits because they don't want to deal with McAllen's processes and staff that are, burdensome in their eyes and problematic, which leads to more time, which leads to more cost and delays. So the good thing is those things can be fixed. But in order to fix them, you need to have somebody on the city commission that's got a small business perspective that will help troubleshoot through those types of issues and bring a perspective, even just through comments, to help alleviate some of those concerns and get things back on track. I've been a small business guy my entire life. I run multiple businesses that are all based here in McAllen. I live, eat, and breathe small business on a daily basis, and I represent small business owners on a daily basis through my profession. I've seen the impacts that these misguided efforts to prop up certain business have created. You have Sam's given a real massive 380 agreement and created a basis in the development where they can put retail space up at basically no cost. Well, when you have a brand new space, no cost, they can charge less rents, make a higher margin than somebody down the street that didn't have that kind of deal. And it's time for the regular citizens of McAllen to be looked after and have equal access to those types of funds and programs so they can compete and not be hurt as a result of these measures. And I appreciate your vote of time. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Villalobos, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, as I said it before, we began this race, and actually I commend these two fine gentlemen. Dr. Caporusso is a fine doctor, and I said that. He's a fine doctor and a gentleman. Mr. Wilkins, he's a businessman, and he's a good person. Every now and then we throw little jabs back and forth, but that's just part of politics. But when you're talking about the municipal arena, there's only one individual that has done it, and has done it well for the past 19 years, and that's myself. So I offer you my experience, my knowledge, my skills dealing in the municipal arena. Not in medicine, not in entertainment, taxes, in the municipal arena where we're talking about McAllen City Commissioner of District 1. I have been involved in all aspects, and I'm talking about economic development. I've been in China recruiting, trying to get investors, and we have. In 1 week and 25 million for a project. And it was not easy, but we did it. We've done stuff that you wouldn't believe. But we're talking about 19 years. 19 years. I didn't start doing municipal work last year, 2 years ago. And that's something that these fine gentlemen can't tell you they have done. I commend them on what they do, but this is a municipal arena, and this is what my experience has been for the last 19 years. And also, I hope y'all appreciate what we have done before when bad government is trying to do something that is not good. And I don't mean bad people. For example, the school and the bond, none of the board members were bad people, but they put it up to the public, the public shot it down and talking about bonds. The propositions or where the money was going to be utilized was not good. We fought it, and thank you all for joining me in that fight. I pretty much started that one. Proposition 1, that was a little different.
This was piqued by his input. I've been fortunate enough to be on different city advisory boards since that time, learning how the city works. I've been to the meetings, I put in the time. I've not missed the meetings in over 2.5 years. I've been to the budget meetings where myself and 2 other people go to every budget meeting held at the golf course. My professional experience of over 25 years are invaluable and will surely assist when elected. Don't be fooled by false rhetoric. If you have a question for me, call me. I'll answer it, and you'll get a truthful answer. When you decide to touch that screen to make your decision for the next commissioner for District 1, ask yourself, which one of the 3 candidates has the most experience as an elected official and has truly been involved in preparing himself for the position? Also, ask yourself, which one of the candidates has made the tough decisions as an elected official? Until you've been on that side of it, you really don't know what's going on that side. It's a little different. I hope you'll see tonight why I should be your next city commissioner. Cap, committed, attentive, proactive, leadership experience where it counts on the right side. Thank you once again for your attention. God bless you and God bless McAllen.
We made it. Everyone, let's give them a round of applause. Let's give the people on the question panel also a round of applause. At the end of the day, the main thing to take away from this is get out and vote. Each one of you has your own voice that no one else has to hear but that ballot. It's very important that you get out right now. Early voting is taking place at Lark Community Center, Palmview Community Center, and at Fireman's Park. There's people there all day holding the polls open for you all. Go out there and tell them thank you on the way out after you voted. January 20th is election day. Please get out there and vote. Tell your friends, neighbors to get out and vote if they can't make it during early voting. Thank you once again to all of our sponsors, and I believe I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Nedra Kanner. Thank you.
And I want to say thank you, Mark, for your job as moderator. Thank you for our candidates. We really appreciate what you're doing and wanting to do for us. Thank you for our question panel. Thank you, Renee, for live streaming. Thank you, Olmo, back there, for taping and putting it on our Futuro McAllen page. Thank you, Joe Bob, for doing it for MCN, and it will be on there. And thank you to the audience for caring enough about our city to try to make a difference. Try to get your other people out to vote. And I'm going to ask you to stay in your seat while I dismiss our wonderful candidates. They can go out in the hall and be ready to meet you. So if you candidates would like to go out and meet the voters out there, give them a big round of applause. And as soon as they get out, did you get in your registration cards? Did you print so I can read it?
She's serious.
Pay your dues. We'd love to have your $20. And again, thank you and good night. Oh, one more thing. We have an Hidalgo County Candidate Forum on January the 23rd at the Convention Center for county candidates, and another one for county candidates on February the 6th at DHR Renaissance Conference Center. And with that, good night. Thank you.